as a parent. So the topic today was building resilience and growth mindset in children, but I modified it a little bit to say growth mindset in learners because this attitude is not limited to young children, or we don't have to feel that if we haven't nurtured it in early years, it cannot be nurtured further. So it's an ongoing process. Anyone who's, whether they are a child, whether they're in school, in college, at work, this mindset can be nurtured, and that's what we are going to discuss today. But we're going to start with this word called resilience. I think let's dwell on this first a little bit. If you look at it, our entire human species actually survived and thrived because of resilience. The early man, the caveman, thousands of years ago, when they found their resilience to fight off, animals, beasts, catastrophes, and then survive, that's what resilience is all about. Now, in our modern day life, in our modern day society, we don't have those kinds of catastrophes happening on a day-to-day basis. So you won't necessarily have to save yourself from a beast or a lion on a day-to-day basis. But today I wanted to start off with a story which is actually about somebody who fought off beasts. So this is an interesting story and a wonderful story of grit and perseverance and resilience. And because I'm also a storyteller, besides being the founder of the Parent Academy, I always like to start off with stories. So let's listen to this inspirational story of a person, a child called Richard Thurer. So this story is about 10 years ago. So his TED Talk actually came out in 2013. We are in 2023. So it's been 10 years. He's now a grown adult. But this is one of the stories that really stuck with me because of the simplicity and the ability of actually embodying resilience in dire circumstances. That's what the definition of resilience is, the positive attitude that you have, the never give up attitude that you have in the face of dire circumstances. So this is the boy. His name is Richard Thurer. He lives in Nairobi, right next to the Nairobi National Park. And all the cattle that you see behind him are actually his family's cattle. So in his community, in the Maasai community that he belongs to, it is the responsibility of a young boy between the ages of 6 to 9 to take care of their parents' cattle. Now, they live right next to the Nairobi National Park. As you can see behind them, that's the Nairobi National Park, which is not fenced on the side that they live in. So there are usually animals that come over to the side of human dwellings. So there will be zebras that come over. And because there are those, zebras or other animals that are coming in, then predators and lions also used to come in and hunt. Now, what used to happen is that not just the hunting of wild animals, the beasts, the animals, the lions used to hunt the cattle that were part of the Maasai community as well. Now, this was a huge problem because this is one of the livelihoods, the key livelihoods of people who are living there. And they're also extremely dedicated towards saving their own cattle. So Richard was one such boy who saw this problem, and he was very, taken aback by it because the lions in the area actually used to take their cattle and the cattle of their neighbors. And this was a huge problem. So in return, what the Maasai started doing is they started killing the animal, the beast. So Richard found that this is not the right solution because the animal is essentially acting out of their own instinct to hunt. So he tried a few things, right? The first thing that he tried, because he was in that age range of 6 to 9 where he had to take care of his family's cattle, he tried to set up fire around the cow shed, around the area where their cattle was stationed. But what that did was it really didn't deter the lions. It actually helped them to see into the cowshed much more clearly. But Richard didn't give up there. He tried something else. He tried putting up a scarecrow. But the lion did actually go away 1 or 2 days, but then they got smarter and they figured out this is a scarecrow. This is not really a human being. And they came and hunted the cattle again. Again, Richard was not going to give this up. So what he did was, one night while he was walking with the flashlight in his hand, he noticed that the lions didn't come. And he realized that because he was walking and the flashlight was moving, that is what made the beast realize that there is somebody there and that I should not venture into the human area. This was very fascinating for Richard. Now, being in a very poor neighborhood, he didn't have a lot of resources, but luckily his mother had a radio. So being the ingenious person that he was, he actually studied electronics quite a fair bit by taking apart the radio. And in his TED talk, he says that very humorously, he says that his mother almost killed him that day, but he learned a lot about electronics by actually tinkering with it. And so he devised this very interesting sort of a setup where he could use solar panels to charge a very small battery. And that battery was connected to a switch. And through the switch, it was connected to indicator lights. So lights that are simply used in vehicles to show your left and right indicator. So he used those lights. And then he set up something called Lion Lights. It's actually a very interesting project. And a lot of the households after him took his idea and took his help to set up these Lion Lights in their periphery. So he had these blinking lights and he got this sort of around the fence of his house. And from that day on, the lions did not bother their cattle. Now, this is a fabulous, fabulous story, according to me, of resilience, because in our day-to-day life, we don't really have this whole thought that we will have to save ourselves or our loved ones from a lion, but there are still people and communities in today's modern world that are facing that issue, and they are showing resilience in the face of that kind of adversity. So my first thought was, when I heard this many years ago, what might have created Richard's resilience? What was the whole reason that he was able to continue to actually find a solution? Because he respected nature around him, he respected the wildlife around him, but he also was very caring about his own livestock. So how did he find that balance, and what made him keep going on till he found the solution that was workable, a balanced solution for both? The answer there is growth mindset. We've heard a lot about this particular, we've seen a lot of infographics also, I'm sure, on growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But I think the basic understanding of what growth mindset stands for is still largely unknown and ununderstood. So this is where I wanted to really bring to the fore what the person who coined this term, growth mindset, Professor Carol Dweck, actually says growth mindset is. So in very simple terms, in her own word, the individuals who believe that their talents can be developed either through hard work or through strategies or through help and input from others have growth mindset. This is as simply put as it can be. So you don't really have to think about, oh, is it something that, somebody who believes that I can do everything, that person has growth mindset? It may be part of it, but the essential, the definition of growth mindset is that it is a mindset among people who believe that their talents can be developed. And it's an ongoing process. It's not something that you're born with. Whereas in contrast, individuals who believe that their talents are innate, so they are either born with it or they are not, they either have those gifts or they're not, those people are said to have a fixed mindset. So this is the clear distinction and very easy to understand. And this is also very important for parents and educators to understand, because we can just take this term of growth mindset and we can maybe misconstrue it and then start expecting the wrong things. So having this clear, that growth mindset is the ability to believe that you can grow through your hard work, whereas fixed mindset is all about either I have this gift or not. That's the whole definition. Now, Another thing to understand is, why do we keep talking about having growth mindset? Why is it so important for a child or for even an adult to have growth mindset? So a lot of researchers around the world have shown that people who have growth mindset are less likely to give up, they are persistent, and they display grit. Now, grit is again one of the very important parameters that is being studied recently in terms of how powerful it is to help people achieve even the most unthinkable of tasks. Just the ability to stick with it, or the stick-to-itiveness of anything. Also, people who have growth mindset are curious and they are lifelong learners. People who have growth mindset are flexible and are adaptable. They are more creative and collaborative. And they see failure as temporary. This is what I defined as resilience earlier when we talked about Richard. They see failure as temporary and they handle feedback well. So if you go through these 5 points, being persistent, being curious, lifelong learners, being flexible and adaptable, being creative and collaborative, and having resilience and taking feedback well. Now, isn't that what we all want for our kids? Isn't this the kind of ethos that we want to develop in our families, in our organizations, in our environment, and definitely for our children? Because these are the foundations, the foundational traits that will help our children succeed in any discipline that they decide to follow. But many times I come across parents who come and say that, well, this is all nice and good, but we believe that all of this can be developed later on. What about marks? What about academic performance? So for those parents who worry about that, I'm going to show you a couple of researchers. This one was done by Blackwell et al. In 2007. They studied a bunch of 7th graders for 2 years. So essentially for 2 full years, the fall and spring of 7th grade, as well as the following year, the fall and spring of 8th grade. And they followed their progress in mathematics grades over these 2 years. And of course, they also took the parameter of fixed versus growth mindset. And they found that the fixed mindset students stayed almost consistently, and they plateaued at their performance, and even there was a slight dip. But the growth mindset students, the students who believed that they could improve their performance through their hard work, through the input, through the help that they seek, and through their own ingenuity, their grades consistently went up through every semester, year after year. So there's a significant difference in their performance versus the performance of the fixed mindset students. And this is for mathematics. It's one of the subjects that most parents are most concerned about because of the entire narrative around math being a very difficult subject. Another very interesting study that I found was on the PISA program, the Program for International Students Assessment. As many of you might be aware, and some are not, so I'll just elaborate on PISA. It's essentially a global assessment that happens once in 3 years. About 80 countries globally participate in the PISA assessment. It essentially looks at achievement of school students and achievement of schools on various dimensions, including language, including mathematics, but also on aspects of creative thinking, resilience, a lot of those parameters as well. So there are obviously millions of students that are on the database of PISA, and Jo Boaler, she's a professor of math at Stanford University. And she's also the author of a very interesting book called Mathematical Mindsets. If any of you are interested, I highly recommend you reading that. And they studied the PISA database as well. And what they found was that the mathematics scores for the students who displayed growth mindset were more than double, in fact, almost in many cases, and in some cases double, or to that effect, of those students who displayed fixed mindset. So this is a very, very significant difference. And you can see that the growth mindset students outranked the fixed mindset students by almost a whole year's worth of understanding of mathematics. So it's not just to say that growth mindset is a good to have and it is an ability which will help them be, let's say, more creative or more resilient. Of course, all of that is going to happen, but even in the short term, if you're looking at only academic performance, growth mindset has a huge component or huge role to play in that area. While we are on the topic of math, this is another very, very important finding that I understood, that I found in Professor Joe Bowler's book, The Mathematical Mindsets, which is on math and mistakes. So it's almost actually eye-opening when you understand this and when you see the gravity of it. Joe Bowler says that when students make a mistake in math, their brain grows. We've all heard about the fact that synapses fire, neurons fire, wherever they fire, they wire together. So synapses fire and they make new connections. And when the students do work correctly, there is no brain growth. Now just let that sink in for a moment. The fact that our brain is neuroplastic and that there is growth happening when the child is making mistakes. But on the contrary, when they're not making any mistake and when they are in their zone of what I understand and they're not pushing out of that zone, there is no brain growth. The other thing that was noted in the book was that students should not view mistake as learning failures, but as learning achievements. So actually looking at mistakes and labeling it as achievement instead of failure is again a huge mindset shift, which both parents and educators will take some time, I think, to absorb and to actually implement. But again, something that is very powerful. If in our own vocabulary, we can start calling mistakes as learning achievements and not learning failures, I think that's a huge leap forward. The other thing in the book was that students do not need to revisit a mistake and correct it to experience brain growth. Again, a very powerful finding. You know, it is helpful if they can go back and try and correct that mistake, but brain growth comes from the experience of struggle. It comes from the experience of having made a mistake, from having had some kind of a maybe a misconception or misunderstanding. And when they have that and they make that mistake, and when they struggle with it, and when they, you know, even if they don't try to correct it immediately, there is still brain growth happening. I think it's absolutely fascinating to know this. And when students struggle with maths, their brain grows. Being outside their comfort zone is an extremely important place to be. So this concept of comfort zone is something that I think a lot of us have experienced or heard about. And sometimes we use these words that, you know, I'm in a job where I'm in a comfort zone, or I'm doing a project where I'm in my comfort zone and I, you know, it's okay. I'm liking it. I'm going with the flow. But here is what research says, right? That through struggle, your brain grows, and through comfort, it sort of doesn't. So basically what they're saying is comfort and growth do not coexist. Again, let that sink in for a moment. Comfort and growth do not coexist. So what should we do now? What should be our next step? Should we all step out of our comfort zones? Is that what the next step should be? Now, this is a bit of just a funny take on it. Why I wanted to put this infographic here is the fact that it's easy to say, get out of your comfort zone, don't be in a comfort zone, you know, don't stagnate in a comfort zone. But if you look at it practically, not everybody will completely suddenly take on, you know, being outside their comfort zone. It could potentially backfire if they want to pull themselves and plug themselves out of their comfort zone all of a sudden. So what is the more logical way to approach this? The most logical way to approach this is to play on your strengths. Don't leave your comfort zone, expand it. So if you let this sink in a little bit, you have certain things that you feel comfortable with, and then there are things that you don't feel comfortable with. If I tell you today, stop doing all those things that you feel comfortable with, just stop it all of a sudden, and suddenly start doing things that you are not comfortable with, how would that make you feel? Wouldn't that be something that your whole body and your mind and your soul will start resisting. It's possible that you may not even want to wake up or get up from the bed and be productive. And that's actually not what we want to achieve. So instead, what we are going to learn today in terms of growth mindset, in terms of resilience, in terms of the comfort zone, is that you don't have to leave it all of a sudden. You need to expand it. So for this, I'm going to share a 5-step process so that you can start expanding your comfort zone today. As I said before, this is applicable to children. This is applicable to adults at their school, at their workplace, even at your home. If you want to do things to get out of your comfort zone while you are at home or in your family environment, this 5-step process is sort of universal, and it's also science-backed. It is research-backed. In fact, I'm currently part of a study of science of well-being, where I'm actively using this process. And it is something that is extremely transformational. And to also clarify, this process is something that I have built from a lot of different places. So it's not a set process, but essentially a culmination of a lot of different ideas, both from literature, from experience, from my work with schools for almost a decade. So all of this comes together in this very doable, practical 5-step process for expanding your comfort zone. So what is the step 1? The step 1 is, of course, you have to first know what your starting point is, right? You have to measure where you are and where you want to be. So the first step is to pen down 3 things that are in your zone of comfort and 3 things that are right outside your zone of comfort. So all those who are currently listening or tuned in, you can do it as we go, or you can actually take these points down and do it whenever you are comfortable. The idea is to actually do it when you are in the mind space, to really think through, to understand, and to really be honest with yourself as to, this is my zone of comfort and these things are out of it. I'm sure there are many things in your zone of comfort and many things outside, but let's, for the purpose of actually finding results and finding efficacy in the system, let's stick to 3 things. So as an example, let's say I draw this circle, and within this, I write 3 things that are in my zone of comfort. I'm just taking some hypothetical things. Let's say English. So English speaking or English writing or English language is my zone of comfort. Art, drawing, expressing myself through art is in my zone of comfort. And let's say playing soccer. All these things are where I find a lot of comfort, and they come naturally to me. Let's put it that way. And then I'm going to put 3 things that are outside my comfort zone. Again, hypothetical, but this is just there to give you some ideas. So let's say writing. I really don't like writing. I'm more of a conversational person. I express myself that way, but when it comes to writing or doing assignments, it's just not something that I'm comfortable with. Making new friends. Let's say I sort of label myself as somebody who is shy and it doesn't really reach out to people. I find it hard to gel in a new environment. And let's say I have issues with mathematics. So math problems, sort of give me a shiver. I don't want to approach them, and I try look for ways to avoiding maths. So now I have these 3 things written down, the 3 things that are in my zone of comfort and 3 that are right outside. Now, the step 2 is that you need to change your internal dialogue about the things that are out of your comfort zone. This particular step has actually 3 subparts. I'm going to tell you all 3 subparts, and all 3 are very important. All 3 are very scientific. And I would suggest that you follow all 3 and not miss any of them. So again, the step is to change your internal dialogue, or this whole conversation that keeps happening in our brain between our 2 ears. That internal dialogue you need to change. I'm not saying stop. I'm not saying absolutely be mindful and let it not happen. But you change that dialogue about the things that are out of your comfort zone. So the first technique that we are going to use is called mindset reframing. How does that happen? Let's say making new friends was out of my comfort zone. So in my internal dialogue, instead of saying, I don't know how to make new friends, I will change that particular sentence to, I don't know how to make new friends yet. Okay. So this word yet is very powerful, and we are going to use it in our internal dialogue, because this is really going to change the way we approach this particular action item, right? So if I say that I don't know how to make new friends, and that's something that I have decided, and I am being a judge of myself, and I'm going to say that that's it, that's how it ends, then there is no further growth that can happen. But if I say I don't know how to make new friends yet, it basically says that I'm a work in progress, and if I put in enough effort, it will happen. So this technique is called mindset reframing. So if you are taking notes, please make note that mindset reframing is just about adding this little word yet to your internal dialogue, and then
sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
Yes.
We have crossed 25 minutes of your talk. I just wanted to remind you that. Please go ahead.
So the next part of mindset reframing is changing your internal dialogue, which is that's your second point. But the second way to do it is affirmations to overcome your limiting beliefs. So if I say that I don't like writing, that's my belief, I can replace that with an affirmation to say I'm going to try and get a little better at writing every day. So I acknowledge that it is not my strength, but I'm going to try and get a little better at writing every day. That is my affirmation. That is something that I'm telling myself mindfully and consciously, that I will overcome this limiting belief. And the third subpart to changing this internal dialogue is called delabeling. Again, a very, very powerful thing. We are very quick to label ourselves. And especially since I worked in the field of mathematics, education, technology for the last 10 years, I know that this is one of the most common label that even adults give to themselves. Many times principals, teachers, they will say that I am not a math person. So they decide and they label themselves as somebody who's not a math person. So you need to replace that label with saying something like, I'm currently struggling with math, but I commit to practicing it and trying to learn. Mistakes are my friend. So try not to internalize any label that I'm not a math person, I'm not a science person, or I'm not a sports person. Take that label away and only address whatever deficiency that you see, which is, let's say I'm struggling with this, but I can keep trying and I will learn. So these are the three ways of changing your internal dialogue, which is your mindset reframing, your affirmations, and then your detail. The third step is rinse and repeat. There is no science about this. You have to really do it. You have to practice your reframing, you have to practice your affirmation, and you have to practice your delabeling whenever you see that your doubt is creeping in. It can creep in the morning, it can creep in at work, it can creep in with friends, but just be mindful that you have to say this again to yourself in your internal dialogue. And if possible, do it daily and in front of the mirror. It is much more of an affirmation and a sort of a confirmation that you're giving yourself every day if you do it in front of the mirror. And just for a moment, close your eyes and feel, how do your words taste? The way we talk to ourselves and to others, there is a certain aftertaste that those words leave. Remember to be gentle to yourself, just as you are gentle to people who you meet. Try to be gentle to yourself in the words that you use for yourself. Now, step 4 is using your strengths as scaffolding for your out of comfort activities. So you have certain strengths that you define that are inside your comfort zone, and then there are certain things that are out of your comfort zone. So why don't you use those things that were in your comfort zone to support the out of comfort zone activities? So let's say, what do you do in soccer that you could use in math? Are you regular with soccer? Can you be regular with maths? Do you go for practice in soccer? Can you do a little bit of practice every day in math? Do you do group work in soccer? Of course, it's a group game. So can you do a little bit of group work in math? Similarly, how can your comfort in English help you make friends? Can you use your vocabulary to be empathetic to others? Can you use your words to stand up for others who are suffering or struggling? Will that help you reach out and make new friends? And then how can your enjoyment of art support your practice of writing? Can you write a few words about your art piece? Can you describe your art piece? So just using those things that are inside your comfort zone to scaffold and support with things that are outside of your comfort zone. This is where you're slowly expanding your comfort zone to become more and more, to have that growth mindset with things that are outside of your comfort zone. And step 5 is again similar to step 3, practice, practice, practice. Commit to 5 minutes of each of these to each of these activities daily. If you can just commit to 5 minutes, which is a total of 15 minutes in a day, to things that are outside your comfort zone, that is more than enough to get started. But there is another aspect to it. Write down the name of one person against each activity who can support you with it. So in front of, let's say, making new friends, in front of, let's say, math, in front of, any other languages that you're struggling with, just write the name of one person who you know, who you trust can support you with this. It could be a mentor, a teacher, a family member, an elder, a younger person, and write their name. Do it on paper so that it's sort of a commitment to yourself, and commit to reaching out to that person. Be vulnerable to reach out to them. This support system is very important. Do not miss out on this point. And lastly, be gentle with yourself. Forgive your mistakes and celebrate showing up with a whoop. Make that physical show of excitement, celebrations, just if you show up. Even if you're making mistakes, be gentle, but that whole act of showing up is something that you need to celebrate. Now, there are a few misconceptions about growth mindset, and this is actually put forward by Professor Carol Dweck, the person who actually coined this term, because she found that there was a lot of misunderstanding about growth mindset and people were using it as they went, right? I mean, there were so many definitions floating around. So she went ahead and clarified these 3 misconceptions, which I think are very important to bring in. The first misconception is growth mindset is the same as open-mindedness, flexibility, or having a positive outlook. So let's say, you believe that somebody who has growth mindset will always have it. No, that is not true. In fact, we are all a mix of growth and fixed mindset. I may have growth mindset in my family life, but I may have fixed mindset, let's say, at my workplace. Or I may have fixed mindset in my relationships, where I feel things cannot change. Some people are just like that. They will never change. But I may have growth mindset in some other area. So we are all a mix of this. So just to label, again, we have to move away from delabeling. We don't want to label somebody as simply a growth mindset person or a fixed mindset person. It's a very fluid thing. So you have to keep yourself sort of always working on it. The second misconception is growth mindset is all about praising and rewarding effort. That's also not true. We can't always tell our children, it's okay, good, you tried, that's fine, even if the result is not there. Of course, we want to support efforts, but we have to talk about what was the learning in this whole experience. What progress are you seeing? That is what truly matters. So efforts are important, yes. Outcomes are important, yes, but in between, what is the learning and the progress that is happening? What is the help that you're seeking? And what is empowering you? Those discussions are very important, and those need to be kept at the core of growth mindset. And the last misconception is just believing that you have growth mindset will transform you. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen that way. It is a whole support ecosystem that is required. Nobody can sort of achieve it all on their own. We all fall back on our, people who we can reach out to. So the support ecosystem is very important. And that brings me to the very last section. Can children achieve growth mindset on their own? As I've already answered, no, it is an ecosystem. There is a parental involvement. There's a parental, a huge role that parents play, the nurturing role that parents play that determine whether your child will be able to develop growth mindset or not. In fact, this is a very interesting study by Gunderson et al. In 2013, which found that the praise that the parents gave their babies between birth and age 3 predicted their mindsets 5 years later. Just let that sink in. The kind of praise, the kind of words that you use for your babies between birth and age 3, 0 to 3, predicted what kinds of mindset they might have. And fixed mindset, let me also put it across. If somebody believes that I am smart, that is also fixed mindset. If you feel that, this is the label that I have, the label of being smart, that is going to be a fixed mindset, and that is also going to cause problems in your ability to expand your horizons later. So praise the effort and the learning and not the attribute and the outcomes. So attributes could be smartness, beautiful looks. It could be just, a lot of different attributes that we constantly call out in children. But instead of that, let's praise their effort and the learning and the progress that they make in everything that they do. And then do educators matter? Again, a very, very important point that Professor Carol Dweck mentioned is that teachers themselves who held a growth mindset create classrooms where students have growth mindset. So it is impossible for a child to do it in silo. It has to be a concerted effort in the school and at home to be able to achieve this. So lastly, what do I do as a parent or as an educator? What is my role and how can I act today so that people around me, learners around me, children around me can build a growth mindset? The first that is the recognition that learning is a journey. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Do not expect miracles to happen overnight. And patience is key. I know it is easier said than done, both as an educator and as a parent, but this is the realization that we have to just sit in and absorb and, work on. The next is you cannot keep penalizing mistakes on one hand and ask children to be okay with making mistakes on the other hand. You have to be consistent on the messaging that you're giving out. If my assessment system is such that whoever is making mistakes is obviously getting a poorer grade, there is no tracking of what is the learning that happened in that entire process of them, learning and taking that assessment, then it's just that we are doing lip service and we are not really making growth mindset a part of our curriculum. So we can't do that. We have to be very consistent with what we are saying. If we are saying that we want you to focus on the learning and the progress, then we can't penalize making mistakes. And this is one of the most, if you take back anything today, I want you to take this particular message back. Share your own authentic journey with failure, hardship, and struggle with the children. All of us have gone through this journey, but suddenly when we become adults, we start to feel that, we know it all and we've had it, we've been there, done that. But sharing that journey of failure, of how you struggled, and how you overcame that struggle, when children see that, they will see you as human and they'll be much more willing to follow in your footsteps than simply asking, when they hear you say, we have growth mindset, have growth mindset, have growth mindset. That's not going to happen. So share your authentic journey with failure and hardship. And if this is the message that you take back, I think this will be a successful session. And that's it. Thank you so much. I'm very thankful for this time that I had with all of you. If you would like to have any more trainings in your personal arrangement or in your institution, in your organization on growth mindset, conscious parenting, or creative writing, storytelling, you can reach out to me. And also this little QR code that you see on your screen, if you have smartphones with you, if you have a camera application, just go ahead and scan this and you'll see the link to a feedback form. I would really appreciate all of you to, share your authentic feedback, because this is where my growth will happen. So over to you, ma'am, and for questions.
Yeah, Ms. Ritika, there are some questions, but like you have already covered everything, and since because of the time constraint, I request the audience to, if you have any extra questions, please send a mail to Ritika and post your questions there too. I'll just mention a couple of, ma'am. As I said, like you have covered about growth mindset and resilience. So one question is, what are the roadblocks to growth mindset? I'm sure like you have explained, but I just want to read out a couple of important questions. That's all.
Yeah. So I think a very important point, the roadblocks are very similar to the ones that I mentioned in my 5 steps. So the biggest roadblock is the negative self-talk that we have, this internal dialogue that keeps happening. And there are multiple types of dialogues. There's the internal, the weather reporter, the chicken voice. Those are things that I cover a lot in detail when I go into the long growth mindset training or orientations that I do. But that internal dialogue and that thoughts that keep coming to our mind, and that keep getting reinforced because we don't change that internal dialogue. We don't do mindset reframing. We don't do affirmations. We don't do delabeling. Because of that, that internal dialogue becomes very limiting. It gives us a limiting belief. Whereas what we need to do is we need to acquire an empowering belief that it is possible. I can do this. I have, if I put in enough effort, I will go from point A to point B. I may not become a perfectionist. So let's say not everyone will become an opera singer. Not everyone will become a ballet dancer. But if I try today, commit that I'm going to learn this art form, then 4 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 1 month, 1 year down the line, I will be better off than I am today. So this belief, sometimes that itself is so hard to nurture within ourselves. So that's where our limiting beliefs stop us. That's the biggest roadblock. And that point where I said that you talk to yourself and you change your internal dialogue, that's a very powerful way to go from limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs.
So who is a resilient educator, ma'am?
So resilience is something that we believe in ourselves, that we will overcome any adversity. And that, it is part of living, right? When we are in this human life, in this human experience, then hardships and difficulties are part and parcel of it. So if we understand that, and if we help our children understand that and be okay with it, to sit in that feeling that, there are going to be hardships, then that is when we make it okay. We normalize hardships. In today's modern society, both parents and educators, we are sort of normalizing a very comfortable lifestyle. It's not our fault. It's just the society that we live in. We are actually living in the most safest, most comfortable era of human existence from the beginning of time, right? For humans, right? We've never had this kind of comfort. We've never had these kinds of technologies to support us in our day-to-day living. So this is where resilience sometimes take a backseat. And when suddenly something happens, when an adversity happens, we are at a loss because we haven't built our muscle memory to be resilient. So the resilient educator is somebody who recognizes that resilience is a very important life skill, and they nurture it in themselves and they build it. So again, I don't believe in that you are born with all of these things. Of course, nature plays a huge part, at least 50% part, but there is a huge role, a 40% role at least, of our own interventions, what we do with our lives, what we do with the circumstances. So that's where I feel that the resilient educator works upon their own growth mindset very actively and consciously.
Yeah, there is a comment for you, ma'am. I like the way you explained about resilience through your story. Somebody really liked the story of the boy.
Thank you so
the
much.
way you explained. Yeah.
Thank you. It's one of my most favorite stories. Of course, if I look around, even in our own households, if we look at our parents, our grandparents' generation, they were extremely resilient. The things that they have gone through, the challenges that they have gone through are, sometimes I feel beyond my imagination. So look for these stories of resilience in your own environment, in your own families. I really liked Richard's story because of the fact that he's literally fighting off lions, which we find so hard to understand in our modern society.
Right. So what is the importance of storytelling in the classroom? How does it help the growth mindset in children?
So I will answer that question by the experience that you all have had today in this particular session. Just now you mentioned a comment where somebody said that they really liked the story that I started off with, right? So as learners, when we are in a classroom, in a traditional classroom, we are expecting the teacher to deliver us some, a bunch of information, knowledge, and we are going to be at the receiving end. So that's the expectation. But when you are telling the story and you're saying that this is just a story, let's connect through a story, then everybody puts their guards down. Okay, then I am not really guarded in the sense that the other person is the holder of all knowledge and information and I'm just going to be sitting and receiving it. Now we are talking about a story. We are discovering the elements of the story together. We are co-traveling in the story. So this is where I'm all ears, right? Everybody listen to me. Had I just started with, okay, this is what growth mindset, this is what fixed mindset is, I'll show you that infographic that you've probably seen a million times. How is that more value giving to you than listening to this wonderful story of a boy, a 6, 9, 7, 8, 9-year-old boy, such a young boy, who's displaying resilience and growth mindset. So this is what happens in our classrooms, right? And storytelling can be used for any subject at all. I don't think it can't be used for maths. It can be used for math, Hindi, English, for history, for any subject. You just have to get creative. You have to find the right stories, and then you have to relate it to what you are trying to teach your children. So getting the whole classroom engaged, that's the power of storytelling.
Yeah. Can you close your PPT, ma'am, so that the audience can see you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because, they might have noted your email address by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not able to see you. Your camera is not
my
visible.
camera is on. My
Yes.
camera is...
Yes,
yeah.
perfect. Now I'm able to look at you. Yeah. So I think this question is from a parent. Can you please provide some tips for the parents to teach resilience to the children?
That's a very good one. That's a loaded one, but something that I think is quite important as well. Again, in my detailed growth mindset session, I talk about a lot of steps, but just a few things that you can do right now is don't be afraid of your children getting hurt. I mean, by hurt, I'm not saying physical hurt, and that's also part of it, but give them opportunities to make mistakes. So when you say, with younger children, one of the biggest thing is when your child is, say, between 0 to 3, 0 to 4, I see a lot of parents who are very worried about the child getting hurt. And it's a normal feeling. I'm not discounting that feeling. It's a very normal feeling to fear that your child might fall and get hurt, or they might bleed and things like that, because of which we refrain from letting them do even the most natural activities. For example, climbing trees or hanging from trees. Now there is a separate research that has been done which actually shows immense benefits in cognitive growth, in neuroplasticity that happens if you allow your children to be in the nature and to climb trees. So for young parents, my suggestion would be at least let them go out in the open, explore, to hold back that that temptation to say, no, don't do this, you'll fall, no, don't do that. Let them experience it, because that is what is going to give them resilience. If they already know that the parent knows everything, and I should have listened to the parent, because the parents will say, if I fall, the parent will say, I told you so, don't do it. So the whole cycle of dependence on the parent starts, and that's when the self-resilience, the ability to actually tune on their own a natural instinct to save themselves, to protect themselves, will not kick in. So resilience for younger parents, I would suggest that, let them explore, and a little bit of scratch here and there will not, change anything. But of course, do it in a safe environment. For older children, again, let them experience failure. So another thing which I'm seeing a lot, which is quite rampant now in schools and even at homes, in societies, and something that my husband and I also have discussions about, is that this whole culture of giving everybody participation trophies or participation gifts. What are we trying to teach our children? Are we trying to say that you all participated, so you're all equal? Yes, participation is good, it is important, and it must be encouraged. But if there is a certain excellence that the children have to they are sort of aiming for, then of course it'll be a journey. Not everybody will reach that excellence at the same time, and somebody might reach it sooner, somebody might reach it later. So let the children understand that it's okay. Be resilient. It's fine. You're not at that excellent position right now, but your journey of, competing with that person or learning through that is the most important thing. So let's not give out, consolation prizes and participation certificates to everyone. It's not important. Let's not make that the whole soul of participation, but let them enjoy and experience failure, experience, that things will not go their way all the time. So just a few tips here and there. Of course, we can have a longer discussion in a different session, but these are things that you can do immediately.
Yes, ma'am. Parents can, I'm sure, like they might have noted down your email ID too, and they'll reach you. School Journal of Education and schoolreformer.com. Thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions. It was a very informative session, ma'am. We also thank the audience for participating in the event and posting their questions. I was not able to read out all the questions, but Ms. Ritika has covered, most of the questions in her session itself. And we will end the session now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.